Hello everyone, I am Charlie Tolhurst and welcome to the Charlie Tolhurst Show for today, the 27th of June. I finally got the date right, 27th of June. I'm joined by Labour Party supporter Zach Chambers to round up all the latest headlines from the past week. Hello, Zach.
Hi, Charlie. Hello, mate.
I'm going to start off the news, Zach, by talking about about Matt Hancock, Health Secretary. We'll get on to this first. This is the viewpoint, guys. We're going to be talking about lots of different news stories today, and we start that with a big news. Matt Hancock has officially resigned as the Health Secretary. Sajid Javid, former Chancellor, is now replacing Matt Hancock. And Zach, what do you make of this news from the former Health Secretary over the last 24 hours?
Well, first of all, Charlie, you have still have got a broken video screen, but that's fine. We can go on as it is. But nevertheless, mate. Hello, mate. But nevertheless, yeah. What's a couple of last couple of days it's been like with Matt Hancock? This was announced Thursday at 1 a.m. Well, Friday morning at 1 a.m. this morning, this got leaked. That a photo appeared in the Sun that subsequently became its front page, Charlie, showing Matt Hancock maybe having a little bit of a nice kissy wissy and a nice snoggy woggy in what appears to be his office. The pictures, as you suspect, is just as horrifying as the video we saw the other day, I think, Charlie. Yeah, I suggest you don't watch it. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say, because I don't even know how to describe it. Matt Hancock has literally took his surname quite literally. This is basically, he's become an ego version of Boris Johnson. Is that he's had an affair with somebody while behind his wife's back, and if we're going to use that time territory, he's probably become prime minister in about 10 years anyway. But yeah, this is humiliating. This is absolutely humiliating, and I'll tell you why. Because he got caught in the act. He broke his own guidance, the one that he told us all to follow, and even in fact the regulations. Because there's a difference between guidance and regulations. Guidance is not mandatory, but ones you should follow. Regulations are mandatory. They're the rules that you have to follow in law. But nevertheless, Charlie, this is the same person that came up with the slogan "hands, face, space." Well, he's literally using hands, face, space literally this time on absolutely nothing. Nowhere is the hand. The hands are all over the face. There's very little space, and these last 24, 48 hours, Charlie, have been fantastic in the political meme world. Literally memes everywhere of Matt Hancock. The one I do feel sorry for, Charlie, is the 3 children that is currently suffering behind the scenes, realizing that his daddy's a cheater, and that he's probably not going to live with them anymore. And the wife, who's presumably now split up with Matt Hancock and called it an over, is probably suffering grief in private. But nevertheless, Matt Hancock's obviously, got shook up with the Gina. I'm just going to refer to that because they're just 2 pairs in a pod. So they are literally right now. And yeah, it's honestly, Charlie, the most embarrassing 48 hours for a health secretary that I've known for a while. I mean, many Tory MPs probably disliked him behind and disliked his approach as health secretary. But now they've got some ammunition because he's now out to force somebody else in. It's Sajid Javid, by the way, who's a new health secretary
and former Chancellor.
Familiar name, yes, former Chancellor, former Home Secretary, former Work and Pension Secretary, I believe, as well, Charlie. So he's very well known in government. He the one that did not enjoy his return was Dominic Cummings, who posted a Twitter rant complaining that it was Kerry Simmons that appointed Sarah Javid and not Boris Johnson. I don't know how to make that make any sense, because that's just him going on a and obviously he's on his post-mortem upset. But yeah, if you thought the photos was bad enough from a now serial cheat, then watch the video, because it's just full of snogging, bum grabbing. I'm just going to use it in the most kindest sort of terms. But there's also questions about it, Charlie, about the security as well. Why did he have a CCTV in his own office? The way it was positioned. And, he looked so interested in doing, he looked so interested in that CCTV footage of making sure nobody was there to pay attention about what was happening. The Mail Sunday was basically saying it was an anti-lockdown whistleblower within government that leaked the CCTV footage, and decided to tell a few mates of his on WhatsApp. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? But yeah, it has been comedy for the last 48 hours for Matt Hancock, and his position, I think, has been completely untenable. He was totally right to resign. He broke his own rules that he helped create, and I found it extraordinary in some ways, Charlie, that he didn't resign straight away. He took about 48 hours to resign, and even the Prime Minister wouldn't sack him. Do you remember, Charlie, Neil Ferguson? You remember when he broke lockdown to see his girlfriend?
Professor Lockdown, I have very strong views about Neil Ferguson. I've never supported him on anything. I
know, but I suppose why Hancock is just as hypocritical as he is. Because Hancock was going on Kay Burley's show at the time, saying that it was right for Ferguson to step down. Boris Johnson didn't have the balls to sack him. I mean, the girl will probably be quite literally grabbing by the balls over the weekend. But oh my goodness me! But can we have Boris Johnson at least have some of it, just to have him sacked, not having Hancock resign for him? I do think there was also some political pressure in this, Charlie, as well. I mean, I imagine this thing would have just gone down deeply. It would have really, it really would have been effective outside the metropolitan bubble. This story, as well, and you imagine public opinion would probably totally just as bad for Matt Hancock as Dominic Cummings would have been. So I think in some ways that's the only good thing that Matt Hancock did, was add some dignity and resign, like the former one who went to test his eyesight at Barnard Castle. But yeah, he's living up to his name of Hancock, and literally, as you probably saw in the videos, there's a lot of hands. There's not much. There's a lot of face involved, but there's not really much space, Charlie.
Yeah, and Zach, I have to say, Matt Hancock, what he done the other day is embarrassment to our country. I really am absolutely I'm fuming. This is a big mistake from the Health Secretary, and he was right to resign. He should have done it much sooner. And whilst I'm in this mood, I'm now going to play for you the video of Matt Hancock's address to the UK public after he resigned as Health Secretary just the other day. Have a listen to this.
I've been to see the Prime Minister to resign as Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. I understand the enormous sacrifices that everybody in this country has made, that you have made, and those of us who make these rules have got to stick by them, and that's why I've got to resign. I want to thank people for their incredible sacrifices and what they've done. Everybody working in the NHS, across social care, everyone involved in the vaccine programme, and frankly, everybody in this country who has risen to the challenges that we've seen over this past 18 months. I'm very proud of what we've done to protect the NHS at the peak, to deliver that vaccine rollout from one of the fastest in the world. And I look forward to supporting the government and the Prime Minister from the backbenches to make sure that we can get out of this pandemic. We're so close to the end, and then build back better so that this country can fulfill its potential. which is so great. And I will do that with all of my heart.
Right, thank you there to Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, for that statement that was released on his social media pages. He has also written a letter as well to the Prime Minister explaining that he is resigning as Health Secretary, and that was sent just the other day as well. But we're going to move on now, Zach, from the news of Matt Hancock to the DUP. I forgot to cover this last week, actually, because, Zach, it has been a very tumultuous time for the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland. And Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, I believe, has been endorsed as the leader of the DUP just the other day. What do you make of this saga in Northern Ireland?
Well, Charlie, from one saga to the other. The Edwin Poots, the DUP, was the successor to Arlene Foster, and was supposed to be the long-term candidate for the DUP, lasting about 20 days as DUP leader, which is quite extraordinary. And then that's the equivalent to 2 Scaramucci's in American terms, by the way, if you're wondering what that means. But nevertheless, the reason why he had to resign is because, well, he faced internal party pressure over his appointment. I think it was Paul Given. He was nominated to First Minister at the time, because he decided to split up the DUP leader role, which is more the internal party thing, with the role of running Northern Ireland, basically, with Michelle O'Neill. And the reason why this has gone down so badly, Charlie, and the reason why he had to resign, was because he made a commitment. He conceded on something called Irish language protections. This is obviously protecting the right of Irish people, Northern Irish people, to speak, to keep using Irish language in many different areas. That's one of the DUP areas that they do not like internally. There was a commitment when they went to power sharing agreement with Sinn Féin, that they would be some sort of Northern Irish language protection. But the compromise by Edwin Poots was that if the Northern Ireland legislature didn't put this into law by October, then the UK government would, and that went an outroar within the DUP. He already faced criticism, by the way, by the way he was appointed, the way he just came up on the scene, and the way he ousted Arlene Foster. But after 20 days, he's out of a job, and Geoffrey Donaldson, unopposed, is in it. Now, it happened. What happens with the power sharing agreement now? Will Paul Given stay as First Minister? I don't know, Charlie. But if that does happen, they're going to need to find another 7 days to find another First Minister, if that's the case. Excuse me. If they do not nominate, then the executive collapses, and then you're looking at an election. Which, if a snap election was going to take place, there's one due next year in the middle of May. If there was a snap election going to be announced, currently the polls have suggested that Sinn Féin would be the largest party, and they would be running the executive in Northern Ireland, which would be quite a stunning result, really.
Yeah.
But the DUP have gone full UKIP in some ways, is they're just ousting every leader they can possibly find, so that they can go hard line as possible. I mean, the stuff with the Irish Northern Ireland Protocol is one of the red lines. The Irish language, that's another. It's always a bit of a hard line, but also no. And this is an internal crisis for the DUP.
Yeah.
I mean, if they get the Northern Ireland Protocol change to the protocol that they want, then it may not be seen as such an issue. But nevertheless, Charlie, I think they're putting their head in a bit of a hole, really, with the hardline approach they're taking, and also by saying no to everything. If you think of the NSYNC song "Bye Bye Bye," it's always the DUP. It's no, no, no. That's how I see it. It's always no, no, no with them.
Yeah, I mean, Zach, I have to agree with you on what you said there, actually, because I think it's clear that the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, they've fallen from the grace since Arlene Foster resigned. They've gone through about 3 leaders within about 50 days. They've had problems with like political pressure from their own party. I mean, let's be honest with you. The way things go at the moment, I feel like Sinn Féin are running the country. It's that bad. I am not kidding with you. But we'll see what happens with Northern Ireland in the coming days, and we'll get back onto that in another time. But we're going to move on now, Zach, to the final part of the viewpoint. And this one is to the United States now. And I think for a lot of people, the surprise in the Jack in the Box appeared. Donald Trump, former president of the United States, back on his campaign rally trail, the Save America rally, taking place in Ohio, Zach. What do you make of this? His first rally since leaving the White House.
It didn't take long for him to see the boring old scenes of a disgruntled old man, shall I say loser, back on the scene in Ohio, red state Ohio, which doesn't feel like very red at times when you think of the governor. Governor's quite moderate, and some of the people there are fairly moderate. But yeah, it was back on his rally over the weekend, Charlie. And, well, it was the usual border, critical race theory, wokeness, all that sort of thing. Election was stolen nonsense. I would just sum it up because I've decided not to bother watching all of it. That's how irritating it is to watch that I don't bother watching it. I'm not, but yeah, it was his usual thing, mentioning his usual topics, claiming that the Democrats have basically destroyed the country within 6 months and stuff like that. And I don't, he was going to say that anyway. It's to me, I honestly think it's a pile of nonsense, quite frankly, Charlie. Somewhere I can hear you sniggering in the background, thinking, "Yeah, he's talking rubbish." But no, it was just his usual stuff to listen to. It was usual tears, fears.
I mean, Zach, this news comes in America as Miami has faced a massive, like a block of flats in Miami collapsed, and about 130 people were missing.
Yes.
And I'm sure, is Joe Biden going to probably make a statement on this or something?
Because he has.
Miami have been. Oh, has he made a statement on the collapsed flats in Miami?
He's made a few. He's also bought what you call FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency. I can't remember the full name. Let me get it up. FEMA meaning it's the Federal Emergency Management Agency. He's basically sent the full resources there to basically as an emergency. There's the latest report, Charlie, I read was that there was 9 now dead, unfortunately, 8 or 9 now dead, and about 150 still missing. It's what's happened, Charlie, is the UK couldn't Grenfell Tower, but without the fire, instead it's collapsed. The scenes were horrible, Charlie. A collapsed building. We remember we famously saw that with 9/11. Although that was due to a plane crash rather than anything. But there was a report that I think that came out a few years ago, Charlie, that there were structural issues with the building, and if that's not been dealt with, apparently I think the mayor of Miami-Dade, where this incident happened, has said that they didn't know about this report. But if that was true though, and they did know about it, then that's not good enough. That they've kept this off for 4 years and not acted on it, and it's resulted in casualties, people trapped, an absolute disaster for Miami and its residents.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah,
I can't say that. That's horrendous.
I know it's horrible, mate.
I have to say, my thoughts go out to people who have lost their lives in this. It's a horrendous event in Miami, and we'll keep you updated on all that via our social media pages. And I'm sure Miami will have to have a major restructuring plan to get that building back in place very soon. But we're going to move on from politics now for a bit. We're going to move on, Zach, very quickly to COVID-19 and then to the motorsport action. Now, Zach, I have been hearing reports in the UK. Now, cases have been rising. I think the other day we had hit 16,000 new cases. However, though, I do have some positive news to share about the pandemic, is that the vaccination campaign is now starting to accelerate, with half of people aged, I think, under 30, the 15 to sort of the 18 to 29-year-olds now having their first dose. That's a remarkable achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, Charlie. It's remarkable, mate. You know, it just proves how well our vaccination program has actually been working here. We've actually now, I think from what I've read, the UK has actually now overtaken Israel in terms of that the speed of the population vaccinated, which is an incredible achievement, an absolute incredible achievement. And it looks like Canada, from the likes of Canada as well, their vaccines are going well. But yeah, it's an incredible achievement, Charlie, because to think about it, you know, Israel was the model for the world at the time, and now it looks like ours. And 3/5 of adults now, I think, have been partially offered a vaccine as well.
I think they're fully. I think that's fully jacked.
Right. Oh, it's fully right. Okay, gotcha. But yeah, that's correct, I think. But yeah, it's incredible, Charlie. Absolutely incredible. The cases, unfortunately, have been going up, rather unfortunately.
But at a slower rate, just to confirm. At a slower rate.
Yes, but it's still going up, though, Charlie. That's the thing, though. It's like it's going up 30-40% on week, the growth rate. It had been slowing the growth rate, which is obviously a sign that cases are starting to drop off and maybe there's going to be a plateau. But if we compare the cases today, I think it's 14,000, still up 60% week on week, Charlie. Now, I haven't seen the growth rate for today. I know from what I've been reading today, Charlie, there has been a processing issue with some of the data that's come in. So they're going to be rather than today's figures, they're going to be put on tomorrow's figures, which means we may see an uptick tomorrow in cases. But yeah, it's hopefully the growth rate is going down a little bit, but it still doesn't mean the cases are still rising. What needs to happen is the growth rate needs to start coming down, and then we reach a plateau, and then we may see the point where, you know, cases may start dropping off a little bit, or they'll drop off slowly. And yeah, that's the last thing.
I think, Zach, as well, I understand concern about this, but the thing is, though, we are going to have to learn to live with this virus in the long run. We can't just go, right, every time it rises, smash local lockdowns in place, because we know local lockdowns do not work. We saw that in Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham calling it a lead balloon. They have to do, because now it's different, Zach, compared to last year. We're in a much better position. If you have a look, it's mainly hotspots like, I don't know, Cheshire, maybe as an example, Lancashire, where it's been rising slightly. Birmingham, I can give an example of another place where they've had a bit of a sort of an uptick in cases. It's concentrated a lot more like in localized areas now, isn't it?
Saying that, Charlie, I mean, you know, looking at the cases in some areas, I mean, look at Essex, for example. There's also I have to say, some quite interesting upticks, quite concerning ones. I mean, they're not exactly massive, but like, you know, like if we look at Colchester, for example, up 199.2%, 69.85 per 100,000 week on week. Epping Forest has seen an increase. Harlow seen an increase. Rochford up as well. So yeah, I mean, it's just signs there, Charlie. The trouble is, what can't happen, Charlie, is that, you know, all these cases are up north, mainly around London as well, potentially. What can't happen, like we saw last time, is seeing all these cases go and start spreading down the south, the southeast, and the southwest, because that's where the data got pretty horrible last time around. And that's the last thing we want to see happening, is the variant spreading at a pace along, down the south. Now, obviously, vaccines might help. Not necessarily. We saw like Andrew Marr announced this morning, Charlie, that although he had 2 doses, he's actually got COVID last week from the G7 summit, I believe. So, yeah, that's the
Andrew
problem.
Marr
Andrew Marr had COVID. Yeah, Andrew Marr had COVID.
I bet he was all right with it though.
Yeah, no, he's fine. He was on this morning. He said he was on the Andrew Marr was presenting his usual show this morning. He just mentioned that he had it last week. He was off last week for whatever reason. I thought he was taking a break. Normally sometimes he does take a week off sometimes, but had a bout of COVID from according to him. But he's fine now because he was presenting the show this week. But yeah, it just proves obviously the vaccine's not 100% against the variant. It's effective, not fully, but at least good news, Charlie's 95%.
Yeah,
with Pfizer effective against hospitalisation, 93 against AstraZeneca. But the job is now to obviously get the data down and not make sure it doesn't spread everywhere.
Yeah. I think the good thing is now, Zach, I found this out the other day, some good news coming in from Andrew Neil from GB News, who we're going to touch on in a bit later. I think the link is officially now being broken between hospitalisations, and deaths. The hospitalisations are now a lot lower, and that's something that we can take away as a positive news from today. The data is getting better on hospitalisations with the vaccine. So that's all the news from COVID this week. I'm going to move on now, Zach, to sports round now. I want to start with the Euros, actually, because England managed to get through to the last 16 after beating the Czech Republic 1-0. However, though, we don't face a very easy opponent in the last 16. Could you explain to listeners exactly what our status is at the moment?
We don't face an easy opponent, Charlie. We got through to the last 16. England did. Because we are England. I'll just throw it as we. But England got through, won by Czech Republic by 1-0. I think we did all right, actually. We did really well, much better than we did against Scotland. But as a consequence of the factors of third place finishes, group, who was finished on top, I think it was Portugal. I think it was Spain at the time. Portugal-Spain match, Germany-Hungary. It resulted in quite an interesting battle for first and third place, second and third, and it would take who we face. So, because obviously we won the group, we would face, I believe, whoever second was in group. I think it's E. I think it was, and Germany finished second in Group E. So we're going to be facing Germany on Tuesday, Charlie. And Germany are not easy opponents before. They've won, I think, the Euros before. The last match, I think, famously, it gives us Matt's memory to Euro 96 when we, I think we beat them. Did we beat them? I can't remember.
It was 1 year, yeah.
It was something. Let me go back to you, Germany.
2-1 or thing on something. I remember the match very well.
We lost some penalties, Charlie. I just remembered.
Yes.
We lost some penalties. And the one that cost us on penalties was Gareth Southgate, the manager, today's manager, who was a player at the time. So to us, this is very much a rematch in '96. It also feels a bit World War III at times because we face we always go on about how we must beat the Germans, otherwise we beat the Germans in the war. Now time to beat them in the football.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, Zach. Up to 60,000 people, I believe, are attending the match at Wembley as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I believe, as well as that, we're going to move on to Formula One now after the Euros. Just to confirm with the Euro fixtures, Belgium, Portugal is currently on. Czech Republic beat Netherlands 2-0, so they're through to quarterfinals. But Formula One now, Zach. And, yeah, Max Verstappen bossed it today at the Styrian Grand Prix.
He did.
And increases his championship lead by 12 points. But the race, though, actually provided some very decent action.
It did. Midfield, not really at the front, Charlie. It was a little bit boring in terms of that. I've seen better weekends, let's just say that. It wasn't really exciting. But yeah, Verstappen dominated, really. He managed to ace it in qualifying just about. I thought Mercedes were going to get it at qualifying because they looked decent at practice 3. They looked decent. And then Max, perfect setup, put the 2 sugars in the Red Bull, got on pole, had a decent getaway, and it was all off from there. Good strategy. I have to say, Charlie, as well, it's a shame, Verstappen obviously won from Hamilton. He got the fastest lap. Good for him. Because they did a fastest lap pit stop at the end. I have to say, Bottas was lucky this time, right? He got 3rd. He only just managed to hold off, though, Charlie. Sergio Perez, who did a 2-stopper, Red Bull tried out to Bottas on Perez this time. Didn't quite work. One more lap, I think, and it probably would have worked, nevertheless. But Bottas managed to hold off Perez this time. Perez finished 4th. Norris 5th. Norris had a really good qualifying. Obviously, Bottas got a grid penalty, if you remember, Charlie, for dangerous driving the pit lane.
And Yuki Tsunoda did as well in the AlphaTauri.
Yuki Tsunoda blocked Bottas. So he was docked 3 positions as well. Bottas is, I'd say, an all right race actually this time by, because he managed to work his way through the field. Perez, I think, did well. Just didn't get unlucky not to get Bottas to the end. Norris, I think, did a good race despite not finishing top 3 this time by, because obviously he started on 3rd thanks to Bottas's one. 6th, Carlos Sainz. Very good race from Carlos, actually. He managed to work his way through.
Very strong. Very strong.
And Charles Leclerc as well, Charlie. He had a issue front wing damage at first, but incredible job by him, by Leclerc, to work his way, to drive his way through the field. Got driver of the day as well. Stroll 8th, good result for him. Alonso 9th. Tsunoda 10th, he'll be very happy with that. I think that's his first point of the season as well. Less happy, I suppose, for Raikkonen and Vettel. Ricardo, very bad weekend for Ricardo.
Battle, I think, as well.
Yeah. Ocon 14th. George Russell, you have to feel sorry for him because he had an issue on the car. I believe the power units. And the brake by, I think the brake by wire, I think at times as well. Verstappen had issues with that as well, but managed to get fixed. And Pierre Gasly was a unfortunate calamity of just after turn 1, where he got hit in the rear tyre, got hit by Leclerc's front wing, got puncture, took a few hours out, suspension damage, ended his race. But yeah. Unlucky for him, but another win for Verstappen.
Alfa Romeo also got a hit as well at the opening lap down at turn 3. It's a shame, Zach.
Oh, I think that's Giovinazzi. I think that was Giovinazzi, Charlie.
Oh, Giovinazzi.
Yeah, Giovinazzi was the one that got hit. But yes, 18 points now, Charlie, is the difference between Verstappen and Hamilton in the Drivers' Championship. That's a lot of room to make up. And we're at the same track next weekend, Charlie, with full capacity. And so is Silverstone now, as we know, Charlie, now.
Yeah,
130,000 fans at Silverstone, which I've read, Charlie, is the biggest UK tri-world event so far in this COVID pandemic. This is going to be the biggest event at full capacity with 130,000 fans attending. So that is going to be quite something, Charlie. Austria next weekend, full capacity. Softer tyres because they're racing the same track, which probably will suit Red Bull quite a bit because they're normally quite decent with soft tyres. The hotter the temperatures, the better the car seems to be. So Red Bull are going to go into this next weekend, I think, favourite, and they're going to have thousands of Verstappen fans, just basically cheering on. That I think is going to happen, Charlie. It's going to be Red Bull the favourites for the games next weekend, and they're going to have a massive crowd to cheer on the side.
And as well as that, Zach, with Silverstone, I mean, this is the biggest event outside of the coronavirus pandemic. We're talking 130, 140,000 fans at Silverstone. This is a pilot event, by the way. People that will be attending have to be booking tickets. They've got to have a negative lateral flow test or have had 2 vaccinations within 14 days of attending Silverstone. So this event will be safe. Trust me, guys, we're getting back to normality now. This is fantastic to see Formula One back racing. Zach, what do you think about the British Grand Prix having the fans back? I know I know for some people say this is Lewis Hamilton was voicing his concerns the other day. But what do you make of this?
No, I mean, Lewis Hamilton has legitimate concerns, Charlie. You know, it's a big crowd. It's going to be the biggest yet in any UK sporting event during the pandemic. It's coincident as well because it's the day before restrictions lift. So it'll be a good trial event to see what we've got an early look at the future, Charlie. If we're going to say that in kind terms, I don't know what the situation is in terms of. I know you've got to have negative tests and proof of vaccine taken. I don't know whether they're going to be asked you to wear masks on the stands or anything like that. It may be possible that if you go into the hospitality area, you'll probably have to wear masks and all that sort of thing as it currently would be. But can't bring fans back. Whatever. I mean, I get the concerns about the size of it, but bringing to be fair though, one, it's the day before restrictions are lifted, and two, oh my goodness me, Belgium's just scored. Sorry, I got a bit distracted there. But nevertheless, two, it's just great to see the fans back, Charlie. Whatever. You think.
Yeah, and of course, Formula One have also confirmed as well that the Russian Grand Prix will be held in St. Petersburg in 2023 at the Igora Drive circuit. Zach, what do you make of this addition to Formula One?
Yes, 2023. That's an interesting one because Sochi is not going to be on the calendar for 2023. And that's an interesting one, I believe. Where they're going? I can't remember where they're going from.
St. Petersburg in Russia.
It's Petersburg. That's St. Petersburg. Yeah, I think they've got a circuit over there. Yeah, they're going to move to the Autodrome Igor Drive. I've never actually seen that circuit. I believe it looks. Is it? I think it's fairly new.
Yeah.
By looking at it, but yes, they're moving away from Sochi, which is not exactly the greatest race in the calendar, you have to say, Charlie.
No.
But they're going to go somewhere a little bit shorter, a little bit not on a street circuit. Sorry about that. That's sneezing. Yeah, they're going somewhere at a permanent circuit, by the way, as well. Sochi wasn't the greatest in terms of calendar, I don't think. Whilst you should mention that, Charlie, as well, Abu Dhabi's going to get some circuit configuration changes for the last race of this season as well, Charlie, which should make the race a little more entertaining in terms of the racing, hopefully, because they're going to change, I believe. Let me get this up.
I know, Zach, I know the changes, luckily. What I know is turn 5 is going to be, the hairpin's going to be a bit earlier. It's going to be faster. Turn 10 is going to be changed. So we'll get this up right now for you.
Yeah, I've got it up.
This is the circuit. It looks I'll tell you what, that looks visually stunning. It
looks okay. You can see where they're trying to put all the changes in. Obviously, that turn 3, the chicane there has gone a little bit. It's now just a bend towards 4. They've also changed the outer. So I think there's going to be a bit more overtaking opportunities, Charlie. But yeah. I mean, we'll have to judge it when, we'll have to judge it, Charlie, when it gets to that late at the end of the season. It looks all right. It looks okay. I'll wait till judge. I mean, it'll be good to see it on a simulator. Let's just say on a simulator. But it looks all right from what I've seen so far.
Yes, it's going to be interesting, Zach, to see how that gets on going forward. So that is the Formula One news. We're back that will be back with the Austrian Grand Prix next weekend. We're going to move on, Zach, now to NASCAR. There has been a race at NASCAR this weekend. It was yesterday. We had the 2 races at Pocono. I know what they're called, luckily, this time round. We had the Pocono Organics 325 yesterday. And Zach, Kyle Larson was leading the race. And then it all went wrong for him at the final corner with Alex Bowman taking the shock win. What do you make of this?
Oh, Charlie, I saw it. That was quite something. It reminds me, do you know what it does remind me, Charlie? It reminds me of the 2011 Indy 500. I know this is NASCAR and IndyCar a little bit different. It reminds me a little bit of that, though, where Larson had, you know, J.R. Hildebrand could have won the race, but he went to the wall, and it went to what's his face? I'm forgetting names here, you know. Oh yeah, it was Dan Weldon. Dan Weldon won that race. But yeah, it reminds me a little bit of that because Larson was easily going to win that race, and then had a tire, just the stroke of luck, Charlie. The last 2 corners of the tire go down. Alex Bowman was behind him, was in the perfect position to just pass him and win the race. And I think Larson finished ninth at the end of the day, which is still a pretty good result, but it's nowhere near good as getting first position, Charlie.
It's a shame, Zach, because he's been on a hot streak the last few races. In Nashville, Sonoma, he has been Charlotte as well. It's just he's had a fantastic run. In that first race as well, I'm just going to get up the standings, but it was Alex Bowman, Kyle Busch, William Byron, top 3, with Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney completing the top 5. And Zach, we go to Pocono again today for the Explore the Pocono Mountains 350. This race is a little bit longer as well.
Do you know what? I just love the name, Explore the Pocono Mountains 350. You know, it reminds me of the wild horse racing race names that we get, you know, the UK gets sometimes. Like, if that's quite a mouthful to get out. I think that's it's just about to start, by the way. I think that is as well. Let me look up the lineup. I think Larson's gone to backup, by the way, and he's going to start from the rear. Unfortunately, they are just on the I see the pace lap right now. But let's get the lineup up, actually. All right, Chris Buescher, Michael McDowell, Truex, Christopher Bell, Eric Almirola, Stenhouse Jr., Bud Wallace, Suarez, Elliott, Reddick to do the top 10. Cole Custer, Ryan Newman, Larson, Ryan Pierce, Ross Chastain, Corey LaJoyce, Anti Alfredo is to the rear. Justin Allgaier is the driver change as well. I don't know who he's replacing. But yeah. Oh right, he's replacing Justin Haley because Allgaier had Haley had a bit of an heavy accident in the Xfinity Series race, Charlie. So Allgaier is in for Haley. So yeah, that's the situation there as well.
Yeah. So that, by the way, that is the Cup Series NASCAR race, just to confirm. So that's a Pocono. You can watch the action on, I believe, on Fox Sports in America as well. We'll keep you updated. We're going to move on. We're now going to move. Yeah. We're now going to move on, Zach, and do Charlie's positive news. Now, the good news is back. I'm like Simon McCoy on GB News. If you want to listen to my segment, we want to bring a bit of positivity. So here we go with today's good news segment. I'm going to have it's a big one this week. So starting with the first one, and actually I'm going to visit this college on Wednesday, believe it or not. South Essex College in the Centre for Digital Technologies has announced a new course. So I'll read it for you here. South Essex College has announced a brand new course which will be available to students from September. The Digital Production T-level course will be based at the Centre for Digital Technologies campus in the Basildon Town Centre. The course will allow you to develop your technical and practical skills with an industry placement with an employer. So basically you can have up to 350 hours of working. You also have to have 4 GCSEs as well, and it's equivalent to, I think, like 4 GCSE A levels as well. And this one, you'll learn how to deal with media software, like how to deal with like production in media. For example, like news-based programming stuff. Like, for example, news stations have to have a lot of production in order to keep them up and running. All the technical side of things have to be done. They need to make sure all the shows are in good order. It's very much like that. And this course is a 2-year course as well at the Centre for Digital Technologies in Basel. It's a big course, Zach, isn't it? I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, they might offer you help with your video screen as well, Charlie, in the future. I know you're going to probably repair that as well. That'll probably come in useful. But yeah, sounds fancy. I noticed that, you know, the campus over there, mate. That was only opened a few years. I think it was about nearly a year ago now. That's just about open.
It was only open this year, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yes,
because of the
and
pandemic.
that's more focused the digital side of things, and more the creative areas. I think I've heard from that area, but yeah, they're already expanding by the sounds of it, mate. From, you know, just a year ago, which is good news, obviously.
So that's the first news.
Good, it'll suit you, Charlie. Suit you.
Yeah. So that's that one. We're going to move on to another news story now. This one is from it's on the economy now. So more than 5 million people have become millionaires across the world in 2020 despite economic damage from the COVID-19 pandemic. While many more people become poorer, the number of millionaires increased by 5.2 million to 51.6 million globally. Credit Suisse research found in 2020 more than 1% of adults worldwide were millionaires for the first time. Recovering stock markets and soaring house prices also boost their wealth. And also as well, the number of ultra-high net worth individuals usually defined as those having investable assets of more than $30 million grew by 24% worldwide in 2020. It was faster than the fastest rate of increase since 2003. And finally, this news is very, very interesting. A Stanford student called Jax, who actually studied at South Essex College in Southend, actually secured a deal with the Canon and Getty company. This news story, guys, is very, very important to us because this student called Jax, not Jacques Villeneuve, before you ask, he is a Canadian F1 driver, but this person here is a photographer, and he is very important to us. Now, his name is Jacques Fenny. He's from Stanford Le Hope, and he's secured a sponsorship deal with Canon, and he's also working as a stringer for Getty Images. He's one of the most visualized companies in the world. The 18-year-old, of course, who studies at Southend campus, already has some of his work published in a number of UK's national publication plates, also some abroad, including the Washington Post in the United States. Jacques apparently began his journey in photography at school, GCSE, before progressing to a level 3 program at college. He started photographing for news events, but always wanted to get into football photography. He upgraded his equipment and got permission to play to photograph for East Thurrock United in the non-league. So yes, this boy here has actually signed a deal with a very famous camera company. Zach, what do you make of this week's positive news?
Wow, that's good. That's a sounds like a top man. Sounds like a top lad. He's obviously worked hard through to get to where he needs to be, and that's just fantastic. I mean, also, I just want to point out, Charlie, I want to celebrate people getting rich and everything like that, as well. And I think it's good. You know, people getting more money these days, and that's good, mate. But then I'm going to have to put my socialist hat on and think, well, we've been through a pandemic, and there's a lot more people that probably got poorer, Charlie. So I don't feel like I can celebrate that in some way. I want that to be a good news story, but I can't really, because there's a lot more people that got poorer, and the rich gets richer, the poor get poorer. I want to celebrate, but I'm going to have to put my socialist mind and non-capitalist, brain on by saying, I want to celebrate, but I can't really celebrate.
It's an interesting one, Zach. I have to sort of understand people's concerns. But this boy has achieved fantastic things. And you think about it, signing a deal with Canon, which is one of the biggest photography or the biggest camera companies in the world. It is a very important achievement. We're going to move on now, Zach, to finish this podcast off by talking about GB News once again, because there has been some changes to GB News' presenting lineup for a little while now. And Zach, unfortunately, Andrew Neil has decided he is stepping down temporarily on his show between 8 and 9, and Colin Brazier will be taking his spot. What do you make about this?
Yeah, it only took 2 weeks before Andrew Neil went on his summer break. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I would, you'd have thought you would have put in the hours and shift, maybe, if you have a bit of time to work yourself in, then probably take your break. But Andrew Neil's decided I'm not going to interrupt my summer break, my pre-planned summer break, which is, I have to say, quite early considering it. But yeah, he's going basically on for 2 months, I believe he's off for, until about the end of August. I have to say, Charlie, you'll probably find that the view ratings will probably drop after that now. In fact, I read an article today, Charlie. Their ratings have dropped second week on air. It's actually got to the point where ratings, Andrew Neil's show actually rated so low, it rated lower than a show called Pobl Ya Quinn, which, if you wouldn't believe it, is the Welsh version of Paw Patrol. So it's always, I don't know what the audience is really, Charlie, to be fair. I don't know what type of audience they're trying to get. But if you're rating less than the Welsh version of Paw Patrol, I think you've got a little bit of an issue. I think the ratings will drop further when Colin takes over as well, for a bit. Because he doesn't have much name recognition as, say, Andrew Neil.
I thought they'd gone with Alistair Stewart. That's who I was thinking.
Maybe. But yeah, I it's kind of hard not to laugh at that rating. I've not really watched most of the shows this week because I've been watching other things. And yeah, it's not, again, my cup of tea at the moment.
Shame's that, because I've been literally on watching GB News for a lot. To be honest with you, Zach, though, I will say something about GB News this week. I have watched. I think there was. I'm going to talk now, whilst we're on the subject of GB News, about anti-lockdown protest, because there was on earlier on, we had, of course, Dan Wootton on Alistair Stewart's show talking about the anti-lockdown protests, Zach, that were happening in London. What do you make of these scenes?
Do you know what? I wish they'd just shut up. No, that's probably cruel of me. I don't get it. They know. I don't get it, Charlie. I don't know why they're protesting, because they're going to get what they want eventually, and that's July 19th. They're going to get it. I don't see why they're continuing to protest about it, because they are going to get it. The trouble is, some of these people, they're legitimate. There's some people who just don't like the lockdown and stuff like that. I don't agree with their approach. I get it. But then you got a load of cranky anti-vaccine protesters as well, who are saying no to vaccines, no to controlling my body, no to Bill Gates, and this nonsense. So you get the usual cranks out there and just ruining it. I mean, God Almighty, there was a load of people, which is, there's probably hundreds of thousands of them, but they don't represent the country, I'm afraid, Charlie. They do not represent the majority view of the country. And I know, I hate to say that, but they don't. If you look at public opinion polls and all that sort of thing, I know sometimes you get criticized, I didn't get asked about it. Why didn't they ask me? Well, you never get hundreds of millions of people asked an opinion poll, because it literally costs too much and it's possible to do within a couple of days or weeks. range. But the majority opinion is that lockdown has worked for this country. Has been a good thing. And they, if anything, they rather have delays than anything like that to suppress virus, and they're understandable if they're delayed. They're not anti-lockdown. If the people have been asked to prefer lockdown. Now, I guess this is what you call the loud minority of people, Charlie, coming along and basically claiming that they are the voice, that they're actually the true voice that's never been heard about it. But it's not representative. I'm sorry, and I don't agree with these protests. I don't agree.
I mean, Zach, I'm not gonna. Whilst I'm on this, I'm not gonna share my views on the anti-lockdown protest. I know Lawrence Fox was down there on Talk Radio the other day, and Julia Hartley-Brewer, some famous television or famous presenters from UK's media industry, were down in London the other day. But Zach, I was watching on Alistair Stewart's show on GB News earlier, Bev Turner, who you might remember her. She apparently is campaigning against anti-vaxxers, apparently. She was on an interview done an interview on This Morning once with Dermot O'Leary. She spoke about apparently this was like an anti-vax protest. I mean, Zach, what do you make of her claims about this, thinking it's an anti-vax protest rather than an anti-lockdown protest?
Well, she's probably right in some ways. She's probably also wrong, because there was anti-lockdown as not anti-vaxxers there as well. But there were several protests, I think, different ranges, but there was certainly anti-vaxxers there. And it felt partly that they were the ones that heard. Dan Wootton was obviously saying, "Oh, these are just anti-lockdowners." Dan Wootton's pro-vax, which is good. He's just anti-lockdown. But nevertheless, I don't agree. I don't agree with the anti-lockdowners, and I don't see why they're wasting their time, really, to be fair, when they're going to get their wish in about 21 days coming up to 21 days. They're going to get their wish, and that's the point. So I don't know why they're wasting their time really doing this.
Well, Zach, whilst we're here, we're actually going to play for you the debate on Alistair Stewart and Friends show on GB News now. This is when Dan Wootton and Alistair Stewart were both debating about this anti-lockdown protest. Bev Turner also beating on him as well. Have a listen to this.
A conflation between what Bev was talking about, anti-vax, and what the vast majority of those protesters are there for, anti-lockdown. I am pro-vax. I believe that everyone should be able to make their own decision, and I don't believe in vaccine passports. But I am absolutely anti-lockdown, and the two things are different. And the Guardian today said that was an anti-vaccination protest. It simply wasn't, Alistair.
Okay, I'll get Bev back in on that, because that's exactly the point that I was making before we ended our conversation there. The charge simply is that it wasn't just an anti-lockdown protest, for which you may well find 35-40% of support in the country. It was also an anti-vax demonstration, for which you will find microscopically small numbers.
I think it's really important to explain this concept of being an anti-vaxxer is not a new phrase. That's been around since we started vaccinating people against smallpox. This is an old phrase. What it's become here, it's become bastardized to mean people who don't believe in the vaccination for anybody. I am not that. I believe that for those who are clinically at risk from coronavirus, the elderly, the already unwell, the vaccination is a no-brainer. My concern is when we are giving it to young, healthy people who are statistically at practically zero risk of getting hospitalized or dying from coronavirus. Those are the people we have to stop and pause and think whether the benefits outweigh the risk.
We'll find more time to continue this argument, because I don't disagree with you. I fundamentally and enormously disagree with you.
Oh wow, Zach, that was an interesting debate there between Alistair Stewart and Bev Turner on that issue.
Oh yeah, that was quite something. Obviously, Alistair Stewart making it to be quite known. Known quite well at the end there. I'm on more the Bev Turner side, than the Dan Wood and Alistair Stewart side.
I have to say though, Zach, I'm going to say this now. I do actually agree with Bev on a few things, but not everything. I'm going to say this. This is how I view it. I understand about the vaccine. I'll go over the people who are vulnerable. Clinically vulnerable people should have the vaccine. 100%. However, young children under the age of 18, I think shouldn't have it. And I'm not saying this to cause controversy. I might feel for some people I might be. But if you think about it, young people do not rarely get seriously unwell with this virus. Hospitalization for people this young is very rare. So in my opinion, young people don't really need the vaccine, in my opinion, under the age of 18. The risk is a lot lower. Now, obviously, if they have health conditions, I would encourage them to take the vaccine. I still want people to be vaccinated. I'm a pro-vaccinator. Okay, I am anti-lockdown. I know that. Okay, I am an anti-lockdowner, but I'm pro-vax. I think it's up to everybody to take the vaccine. I still want people to have the vaccine because the vaccine is our way out of this. And if you get the call or get the text, please take the jab. But what Bev said, Beverly Turner did say though, Zach, was that it's kind of like it was an anti-vaxxer protest when it was actually there was people there who were anti-lockdown. And she's then talking about the vaccination program. It's clear, Zach, that there is some conspiracy theories going on about the vaccine that makes me feel like my head is scratching a little bit. What do you make of this?
I think on, the under 18s getting vaccinated, I think they should, because I think they're the main source of spread, basically. If you go to school, for example, Charlie, and stuff like that, you'll probably find that they are the main spread of COVID.
Okay. That's fine. If you've got to disagree with me, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, no, I absolutely.
That's what this show's about. It's about having the right to freedom of speech.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. If there's statistically, if you look at it, it's the 18s, the 20-year-olds under 18. They're likely to spread it to COVID, and whilst they're asymptomatic, I agree most of the time, they are still a source of transmission, and they spread to those who are probably less likely to be asymptomatic. But I think under 18 should have it. I think they'll be part of the reason that they stop spreading this virus about.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Zach, because I feel like it's a very political issue. It's a political issue for many people. It's you got to take the vaccine. I mean, we have done so well now. We can't have the scupper progress with the rollout. I think the issue is obviously many news stations have not covered these anti-lockdown protests. I just also want to say before I wrap up tonight's show here on the Charlie Tolhurst Show. Now, if you've been watching some of the anti-lockdown protests last week, you would have known that a BBC Newsnight journalist, sadly, I forgot his name. I think he's Nick
Watt.
Nick Watt. Thanks, Zach, for that. Nick Watt. Sadly, last week, he was targeted by a baying mob of anti-lockdown protesters. Can I just say that whilst it is the right to peacefully protest, it isn't the right to break mob rule. I don't think mob rule has no place in our country. And Zach, what did you make of the mob when they tried to attack the journalist from the BBC Newsnight?
It's appalling, mate. It was appalling. I mean, media should be going around. They should be allowed to do their job without fear, or doing their job, whatever it is, and whatever you think with the BBC. Sometimes you could complain about bias, whatever you want. GB News, the same here. Any other reporter, they should be free to do their job, report on what's happening without them being hounded by a bunch of mob and a bunch of idiots. I know there's been a few arrests regarding this or that already, which is good news. But nevertheless, Charlie, it was totally unacceptable what happened
Yeah.
to
I
Nick
have to
Watt.
say, Zach, when I watched that or when I heard about that, it reminded me of January the 6th in America, in the Capitol, about just how horrible that insurrection was of the Capitol when the 5 people got killed there. You think of that, how reporters must have felt covering that news story. Imagine what it would be like covering the same news story it was the other day in London with the anti-lockdown protests.
I think the thing is, January 6th completely different. That was just like thousands of mobs. This was still a pack of mobs, but still idiotic. But still, yeah, it just proves that there's a bunch of thugs out there that will just, harass you for doing your job and not dwelling to your beliefs or thoughts. It's not supposed to, these people think it's supposed to be a propaganda outlet for them. It's not. That's not how it works.
I know, and I have to agree, Zach, and I think as well that there is right to campaign. Propaganda is very, very important in some areas, like with campaigning and that. But in terms of going around trying to basically attack Nick Watt, who is, by the way, a BBC News journalist, and he's a well-respected journalist. He's a friend of Andrew Neil's. He's a friend of many journalists across this country of the BBC. For people to be going up there trying to basically attack him, that's wrong. And he was,
I absolutely agree.
He and Zach as well. He had to run back to number 10 to Downing Street, using his own feet. He had to run as well on his feet to get away from the mob. Thankfully, he was okay, albeit a bit shaken, which was a nice thing to see, Zach, wasn't it, for Nick Watt?
Yeah, I have to say, Charlie, I think it was surprised me with the lack of police presence around that mob. Where were they? Where were they? They were nowhere in sight. And if you think about it, if there was a bit of police around, that maybe that could have been prevented. But the lack of police was, I think, especially concerning, Charlie.
It was, Zach, and I'm sure for many people, it's not right. I mean, as I've said earlier, peaceful protesting is allowed. As for mob rule, breaking mob rule, that isn't allowed. And I think people have to be, if you're protesting, please be careful. I'd encourage people to use propaganda, but in a way that is very, should I say, respectful, not in a way that is going to threaten other people.
Yeah.
And especially, I'm so glad that Nick Watt is okay. And I send my thoughts to him, and I hope he's okay. And I just hope the rest of the media networks in this country are covering the news stories wherever you are in a very safe manner. But unfortunately, guys, that is all we've got time for the Charlie Tolhurst Show this week. We'll be back again next time for another edition of the Charlie Tolhurst Show. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. It's been a pleasure to have you on tonight. I've been listening live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you again next week for another edition of the Charlie Tolhurst Show. Thank you for listening, everyone. Take care and good night.